We're talking to an entrepreneur who has helped a number of healthcare professionals to think about their mission in life and to grow, to scale, to have purpose, and to do things that are more remarkable than we've ever seen before. But the key thing is decision making. How do they go about making decisions? And there are a lot of transferable skills that you can think about as you become an entrepreneur to help you make better decisions as you go about doing whatever it is you do.
This is Make Better Wealth Decisions, a podcast about financial blind spots, decision making, and how the reality of higher rates, global tensions, and tariff instability impact your investments. I'm your host, John DeGuy, a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto.
Welcome to the show. Today, I'm excited to be joined by someone who's all about high performance, purpose-driven leadership, and most importantly, making better decisions under pressure. And that's Serena Runbeck. She is a surgical PA who has turned to a performance and communication expert who helps high-performing and high-achieving professionals break out of burnout and create sustainable success. She is a physician assistant, and that is a licensed medical professional who works closely with surgeons to provide patient care during and after surgical procedures. They bridge the gap between surgeons and patients, ensuring safe, efficient, and high-quality surgical care. So that's what she used to do, and now she does some consulting work, and I'm delighted to have you on the podcast today. Serena, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, John, for the amazing introduction, and thanks for everyone joining us today.
So in the world of wealth management, where decisions are not just about portfolios, but also about people's futures, mindset is really critical. So today we're going to be talking about powerful decision-making and how that really looks, what that looks like in terms of when in your world, it's when lives are in the balance, but in my world, it's when people's welfare and finances are in the balance. And so the stakes are high either way. We've got to make decisions and lead through complexity and a number of different emotional concerns that people have to deal with. So I'd like to begin by referring to you as a healthcare disruptor. I think that's fair to say that you're a disruptor in the healthcare space. Your website offers this value proposition. I love it. Here's what it says. It says, restructure your business to provide better social impact, increase revenue, and get your startup running like clockwork. So tell me briefly, what exactly does that mean and how do you do it?
Yeah, I believe all of us are in the sense of a mind, body, soul connection when we think about health. And your business actually has a mind, body, soul connection. And if you're not connecting well into all these components, you're not having a clockwork. More so is the EMIS, for many people have heard it, right? You're not exactly a stakeholder in your company. You're not even just a manager. You become that doer mindset. And a lot of us, I think we got trained years into this is what we go to school. This is our skill set. This is what we do. But we start forgetting that just by doing what you're really good at, not necessarily means you have a good workflow that will give you the space, the health, and the lightness to expand. And many people wanted to think about their wealth is scalable, their business is scalable, their own impact is scalable, but they have no idea what that even means, right? They just want more. And when we're just driven by having more and more without specific number, without operational, without the right people there to support you, it's what? A chaos, right? So when we're thinking about that really strong system, that's where I left medicine to say, I wanted to impact one to many. And that's with technology, that's with innovation, that's where putting the right money, where we're investing into the innovations that are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, not just the people that step into my office, my operating room, that's just one-to-one, right? One-to-one family, one-to-one patient, one-to-one caregiver, one-to-one team. And when we're thinking about that performance side, we see there are 5 ecosystems, right? And so many of us who are A players, right? We care about our legacy, and even legacy is built differently, right? So what does that legacy look like? That's what we call Nexus core. Your core of this entire, what you're meant to be, what you're serving in society, right? And that has a multi-layer of what that structure look like. We can talk about a little bit more. But beyond this legacy ecosystem is what? Next is self. Who are you as the individual? What make you having fun? What make you say yes to things? What make you say no to things? And down to the simple thing of when things don't go well, how people apologize to you. Have you even thought about that, right? And also next is family. What does that mean for your family to be there, right? Some people want kids, some don't, but some people are very close to their siblings, to them, elderly parents, but some people are not. And then some people really care about growing the whole family legacy, right? And that tap into your own ecosystem of social impact. So then now you have self, family, and your core of legacy, right? That nexus core. But who else? You have mentor, right? We all look up for someone and we want the mentor that we can tap into their mind, their thought process, their network perhaps. And if the network, that become what? Next is partnership. Who are the people in our immediate circle or the outer circle, right? I think one of the studies say we can only maintain about 100 people at a given time, right? When we think about that, people have social followings of thousands, 100,000s. We're not really maintaining those relationships. They're just followers, right? So who are the core 100 people in our immediate circle that are impacting our legacy, our self, our family, our mentorship? How do we all compound that into each other? That's how we can grow and expand, right? We're never just self. We're never just that one business partner. We're never just that one company. We're growing all together. So for us, it's thinking about that multi-layer of what does that mean to just have fun and then create both wealth and self.
It's funny because a few moments ago, you mentioned The E-Myth, which is a book written by Michael Gerber that I think I read it about 25 years ago. And it's funny because you talk about how what Gerber talks about is there are people who are really, really good at what they do, who decide they're going to go into business for themselves because they have an entrepreneurial seizure, but they're not really prepared to think about what they can do to scale things and to have a greater mission in life and a greater purpose. And of course, if you're doing good work, then scaling it just makes it that much more impactful. And whatever good it is, it's even better because of disrupting the way you disrupt things by making things scalable and useful. So wealth management is a lot like that too. And there's a lot of data flying around, and but also a lot of emotion. And that's especially true for in your world. We talk about patients. In my world, we talk about clients. But in both cases, they tend to be emotional, and they make decisions, or they think they want certain things that they don't necessarily know, and they don't know the evidence, and they're relying on the experts to help them navigate what they have to do. How do you find people can find the sweet spot between data-driven decisions and gut instinct and just having a good bedside manner, for lack of better terminology, to help people to get to where they need to go?
Yeah, having that intuition. So we know by research of thousands of people, there are 50% of people who are very much gut intuitive. So we call them more energetic people, right? They sense it. This is what it is. And then there are 50% of the population, they're very cerebral. You have to thought out the exact cases, end user scenario. So we call them those a physical communicator. If you don't give me a scenario on what that end result is, what is the number that driven the proving that we can actually make sense of it, just because I gut feeling is there, I still don't have that trust, right? Mm-hmm. And then we understand of the people who has gut feeling, half of those people are also physical communicator. What that means is now they have to touch and feel, right? So for the people that you have to show me a demo, you have to show me what was it, right? So sometimes in medicine, a lot of is we're explaining the whole process. Why do we need to do pre-op testing? Why do we need to do post-op testing? What is the procedure that we're going to do? And talking in layman's term. And that's what I typically use for all the startups that are fundraising. How do you tell a story without bombarding people with your scientific term, with all the numbers, with the molecular is this way? Actually, a lot of people don't care. They care about how are you getting to the result that you promised to do? What is the true impact you bring to the table? And then you can add some of your case studies, your testimonials, your long-term clinical trials, right, that backing you up, because then the rest of us who are geeky side of us, like, whoa, let me read those papers, right? Let me see what's going on. And so there is actually 9 different perceptions in the world. And each of us actually come with a gift of how we perceive things. So making trust and having those like decisions, right? Sometimes when we're investing, individual investors could be a small check, let's say 25K, versus other people might write $1 million check from a small VC fund, right? And family office is even bigger. So it just depends on where can we bring the right alignment in how people perceive value. And at the same time, how do you build trust in the process that keep them interested enough to keep having these conversations and not feeling like what I call the first day effect. This is great. This is awesome. Right?
And then you have to get in the weeds, and it's like, yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah,
so
getting the weeds is I don't understand.
What if the decision isn't obvious? So whether you're working with an individual client, but what if you're helping someone actually try to scale a medical practice? Sometimes the course of action, it's not obvious. And you've got different people who make decisions differently. As you said, there are different ways of looking at things. How do you, if the person is not giving you a clear signal, if they're more emotional or if they're more cerebral, how do you suss out, A, what is the right course of action? Because sometimes that's not obvious. And B, how do you communicate the course of action, or maybe the laundry list of potential courses of action, so the person can feel empowered that they're making an informed decision about how to proceed?
Yeah. We actually, before we engage with any of client and their business entity, we do a 5-dimensional leadership maximizer assessment. So what does that mean, right? We know there's a mind, body, soul connection. So how are you communicate with your physical body first? And then how are you communicate with your spiritual body? Means what's the core value and mission that you want to do, so you don't get into the first day effect. This sounds great, but what I truly wanted to do is XYZ. So this is going to be a short pass. Then people's like, oh, I'm left hanging because you're left, right? Mm-hmm. And then the mindset is, what is your cognitive behavior? How do you train your brain to constantly function in the higher level instead of criticizing yourself, instead of feeling like, oh, I don't have this person, therefore I cannot do. I cannot activate myself to do this because I'm still waiting for the right moment, right? So then when we understand our mind, our soul, our spirit, then we start thinking about skill set. Most people dive into skill set first. They're like, I find these people by resume. They should just know it, right? But we know there's a very different from people who are high-level strategists who can plan out the vision, the bigger SOP versus the doers. How do you bring down the bigger level of strategic planning into something the implementation team can do, right? And that also go back to that myth of, are you truly the strategist, the stakeholders who can think that big and then puzzle the right people, resource, tools together, or you're actually just the doer level. You are just great being the technician. You tell me what to do, you tell me the end thing, I'm going to get it done, right? And then you need the in-between people, the managers, to keep everything synchronized and on track. So usually what we say is, number one is clarity. Clarity on your capacity, who you are, how you communicate, how you want to receive information, what your true purpose is there, and how your mind is helping you or sometimes sabotaging you, right? And then add to the skill set on top. And then we say is capacity. What's the resilience that you have built? Do you have space to take on extra work? Or do you have the right health of the infrastructure wiggle room for you to even think about that way? Or we say, you're doing really well. How about we just rinse and repeat and let other people pick up the other thing, right? And then you can do the consistency. Means what's the actual thing you can get more clients, have more sales, investing in the better companies that actually align with your legacy, right? Lastly, then is continuation, right? So you can then keep going, right? You're already in your genius zone. You're in that zone. You just feel good. You're doing what you're meant to do. You're not distracted, right? And then you're in the flow. So a short version is, although we have to do a lot of assessment upfront, which for a lot of people feel like labor intensive, but it makes things so much easier when people coming together instead of constantly correcting. And then so you feel like you're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
So you measure twice and cut once, so that you can, work from first principles to make sure you know what you're doing is in fact consistent and aligned. In my field of work, we talk a lot about biases, behavioral biases, and a lot of people do things because they just assume that that's the right way to do it without really being purposeful in the way they think about things. Let's talk about blind spots. What blind spots do you encounter when you're giving people advice, when you're trying to help people to scale up their business, to grow and to be more impactful?
Blind spot, most people is on human capital. For us, is your intellectual capital, right? And that can be a great predictor of wealth. However, just because you have intellectual capital, you don't have the social capital, human capital to back you up, it doesn't grow, right? It just, you're the expert, you build something amazing, but how do people even know about it? And that's our social capital. I think most people's blind spot is they're doing everything. Oh, we're doing Google ads. I'm going to all the events, summits. I'm talking to all those people. Everyone loves us. Everyone gave us cheers. And then I said, are they writing checks? Are they signing contract? Right? How are you building your wealth from that social capital if you're not able to share the right storyline? And that tap into the perception of, are you understanding how people build trust? Are you talking in all the languages when you don't really know who they are yet? And then it's also the blind spot in human capital, means people falsely believe just because they have amazing people on their team, everyone is a high performer. That's not really true, right? People all have their own internal goals. If you're not able to align that with your bigger mission of this company and the movement, even you are an investment firm, everyone is going to have a different way of how to invest, right? Are you coming together for that big check? And then even you just cranking fund 1 to fund 2 to fund 3, if the earlier stage you're invested, are you keeping them alive? Do you know that the company you invested in are still actively growing? How are you supporting them when you're already moving to fund 3 now, right? So it need to be a cyclic way of thinking. The gap usually is the right people. If you can have the early stage founders, we do the 5-degree assessment. Also need to make sure these co-founder dynamics, they're there, right? They're meant to do this together. It's not like 2 years later, someone feel like, oh, progress so slow. We should have hit our 5 million mark. We're not there yet. And then they're bounce off somewhere else.
Okay, so let's talk about culture then, because a lot of this, it seems to me, revolves around how the different people that are parts of the team fit together and how well they work together, and what attitudes they bring to the table. When the time comes to make decisions, and in your world, you're talking about venture capital and building out wealth health practices. In my world, there's some degree of venture capital, people who are investing in this, but most people are just retail investors who are just trying to find a way to save for their retirement. They're more ordinary people earning a 6-digit income, but not a 7-digit income. What advice would you give to people to make sure that whoever it is they're working with is working in a culture that is supportive, that understands their goals and can help push them to think about things in a way that would be productive and constructive and hopefully in alignment with all these other things you've talked about in your spirit and your community service and so forth?
For that individual investors, we always see them also like the physicians who has established career, right? They're 10 years into it. They're very comfortable. And now they're like, what else, right? Like how else can I contribute? Maybe I can invest into an individual company. Maybe I'm leading. So we always see that all of your gifts, everything that you carried from your career, everything is transferable. So when you're working with that financial advisor, you're working with that wealth manager, is that what is that align your personal legacy and as well as your career, right? What does that look like for the next big thing? And I think, John, even for us, when you were on my podcast, Provider's Edge, we also talk about that. What's the risk profile? How risky are you willing? When you're investing in a startup, that money's in there for at least 3, 4, 5 years, and you wouldn't want to touch that, but your growth might be much higher. Or you can diversify other percentage into other bonds, trades, and crypto, whatnot. So then you are able to monitor the ups and downs and be able to draw money out when it's needed, right? So it's be able to have those conversations is what's the bigger play and what's the immediate need? What's the risk profile that you can? And when we do these due diligence as an individual, you can say, okay, we use a medical term, we trained years by asking the right question, right? Diagnose. What are the symptoms? What are the things that matches the profile? You would do the same in your investment as well. How healthy is their human capital? Do they have the right people? How healthy is social capital? Do they even have a pipeline people that they're talking to that understand how people with their problems are talking about it and not just randomly drawing ideas? They're actually talking to the people who are end users and they understand the market. They know how to tap into it, right? Even some of those things are very just logical sound questions. You don't have to be a marketing and business guru to ask those questions, right? And then something in healthcare we do is because you're a clinician, you also wear the hat of, if I'm investing in something, I want to see something that I can understand, right? If it's in my practice, it's a digital platform that is tracking perhaps a longevity target, right? With a hormonal change, whatnot. Do I already see the benefit of that in my own patient, in my family, right? You start thinking in that way is what's the practical side. And if you have to be involved, or any doctor, any clinician, any nurse have to be involved, is that adding burden to their life, or it just seems to be eased that process? Because if it's adding more work, we know it's going to be hard to push to the market. If it's easier, right, what's the true benefit? So use our own knowledge to make those decisions and be able to have those conversations with your wealth manager can help really making some of those personal decisions much easier.
So one of the things that we say that you say in your line of work that I say in mine is that prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. So it's really important to ask the right questions to get a good feel for whoever it is that you're working with and whatever it is you're doing. I'm curious, therefore, about your decision hygiene. And I think in particular, because I know you use AI a fair bit, how do you go about, what's your process for decision making in general? And to what extent do you use AI to assist you in A, making decisions, and B, in communicating those decisions out to the people that you're dealing with?
Many people believe AI is an LBL. We say it's a part of the process. It helps us speed up of data entry. So for example, we're going to have hundreds of applications that comes in annually for our Impact Award, right? Recognizing the true people who are putting the right resources for healthcare AI, for diagnostic, for mental health, for women's health, medical device, right? Digital health, of all these major topics. But when the application comes in, if you have to individually review all of them, it's labor intensive. However, if you train the AI model to specifically looking for indicators of what we like, for example, is there a true user application? Do they understand our market? How much do they understand cost effectiveness, right? There are certain things in every single pitch deck we always look for. And also in how they measure success. If you don't even know what you're measuring, how could you say you create impact, right? So there's things in there that we look at immediately are able to screen people in and out. And then the people who are in, there's a scoring system, right? 1 out of 5, how high is your score? And then we move that on to the next phase. Now, the next phase is what? We start wanting to see you. We wanted to not just the perfect people on paper, right? And that means that human element needs to be there. So then we want people to submit that 2-minute video. So we get the human interaction. And then we actually put them into a live event to actually see how well they're interacting with other people. This is all part of, yes, the AI help us to set reminders, communicate, making sure they're showed up, make sure some early stage evaluation is there. We also use AI for all our investors, smaller check and bigger VCs, to see what stage of company, what business model, and all these companies have that great match, right? And then give you a percentage dial like a pedometer, right? Like you're 90% match or 60%. At least people have some idea before you go to a conversation. Otherwise, we're just drowned by pitches after pitch, opportunity. And then you get into the bias of, am I not seeing enough deal flow, or am I seeing too much? I don't even know what to do.
It's amazing. We've run out of time. I have more questions, but I don't have enough time. So I'm going to have to let you go. I want to thank you for your time today, Sabrina. It's been a real pleasure. I want to wish you all the best in the future. You're doing really, really great work, and I very much appreciate it.
Thank you, John. And then I can't wait to continue to follow your work and then for all the things that you have putting out.
This podcast is not to be construed as offering specific investment advice. Please consult a qualified advisor before acting. My books, Stand Up to the Financial Services Industry and Bullshift, are available online. If you'd like to meet to discuss how the topics in this podcast affect you directly, please visit my website.